G'day. I have been reading. So I was having a few beers down at the Thirsty Bugger last Saturday, and my mate Steve-O gave me this to read. Boris Johnson, the Churchill factor. I would love nothing more than for the comment section of this video to be a big clusterfuck of arguments, pro and anti-Churchill. For some reason, actually for good reasons really, Churchill is an absolutely divisive character to this day. You wouldn't believe it. They won't tell you this in school, and they certainly won't say it on the media, but people disagree about Churchill's role in the world. So, anyway, after reading it, I looked at my watch, and bugger my days, I still had 2 hours of reading time left before leisure time. I go down to the duck pond and watch the ducks because they're bloody hilarious. So, I had 2 hours left. Out came the beer, up went me tootsies, and off the shelf jumped this cozy little number right here. Can you see it? Sorry, excuse me. I'm new to all this camera stuff. There, Stephen King on writing, and that's a jolly good book. It's a cozy little number, let me tell you. And Stephen King makes this amazing quote here. I will read. Don't wait for the muse. As I've said, he's a hard-headed guy who's not susceptible to a lot of creative fluttering. This isn't the Ouija board or the spirit world we're talking about here, but just another job like laying pipe or driving long-haul trucks. Your job is to make sure the muse knows where you're going to be every day from 9 till noon or 7 till 3. If he does know, I assure you that sooner or later he'll start showing up. Now, this got me thinking because I've always had my own theories on the muse, and I know it's another divisive point. Some people say that if you believe in such entities, then you're absolutely bonkers. But I'm here to tell you that the muse is a real entity, and even if you can't suspend your disbelief, just try to imagine it as being a real entity, because to explain it all as a metaphor or a useful myth is more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. So all of that struck me as being eerily familiar, the Stephen King quote. The easiest way to grasp what I'm about to tell you is to suspend disbelief, for illustration's sake. Accept the axiom that the muse is a completely literal entity that really exists. It would be possible, but too labor-intensive, to constantly explain it as a metaphor. I just made this point before, but I've written it down in my notes. The first task of the investigation is to decide what we mean by the muse and how to identify its behavior. And I've made... Oh, no, I didn't put an apostrophe in there. That's good. The possessive its doesn't need an apostrophe, as I'm sure you all know. The muse is not like a dog. If you tell a dog, get over here, Rover, the dog will be standing to attention before you have finished giving the command, with a waggly tail and a hanging tongue. Try this with a pussycat. Get over here, Slinky Malinky. The cat will look up to see who dares to interrupt nap time, and seeing it's only you, his servant, he will go back to snooze mode. You say it again. At best, a whisker might twitch. The third time you give the command, the cat has forgotten you exist, the law of diminishing returns. The muse is like a cat. Both will approach you in their own sweet time. However, just as a cat is more likely to approach you regularly if you have established a habit of opening the fridge door at a set time every day, so is the muse far more likely to strike if you have set up a time to do writing, practice music, or whatever it is you do every day. This is what I've always believed, but the quote from Stephen King basically legitimized my delusions to some degree. Waylon Jennings said, I've always been crazy, but it stopped me from going insane. He also said to Buddy Holly, I hope your plane crashes. As with all metaphysical entities, they express themselves over time in patterns. That's where the word paternal comes from. As opposed to maternal, which of course is the material out of which everything is made. I know I'm going to get a comment from somebody who's done 3 years of epistemology at university saying that I'm a 101 philosopher. That guy can fuck off. They also respond to patterns or rituals. these metaphysical entities. There is a religious element to this. By doing something ritualistically through habit, you are forming a vessel for the metaphysical pattern to express itself through, a tabernacle of routine which can house the muse. It is an act of faith. You are prostrating yourself before a higher power, burning an offering of your most valuable possession. Time, no doubt. No doubt some of you will be burning incense in the form of cigarettes or spliffs, as the case may be. And what's more, like Cain and Abel, there is never a guarantee that the higher power will accept your sacrifice. This concept of building a vessel for higher powers to fill is a universal one, though clothed in many different descriptions. Kevin Costner's movie, A Field of Dreams, sums the idea up nicely with the expression, if you build it, they will come. Eliphas Levi describes magic and monastic ritual as having the same ritualistic power, repetition essentially. And I'm not promoting anybody's works here. I happen to be one of these people who can read a book written by somebody who I completely disagree with. Even though there seems to be a modern trend, a regressive trend towards book burning, I happen not to be one of those people. Another case in point where I'm not agreeing with the author is Machiavelli. I agree with some of the things he says because they're just plain observation, but in his book The Prince, which is essentially a guide to power, he has a chapter, I can't remember which number it is, but it's a short book, read the entire thing, The Prince. He talks about the river Fortune. The river Fortune, you don't know when the river's going to flood, but what you can do is embank it and dike it up to your advantage for when it does flood. But again, it's an act of faith. Here is the point in my own simple language, he says, reading. The Muse gives us an idea. The idea itself has no expression other than what we can give it with the mental tools we have. For example, the idea of 1 + 1 is 2 is universal. It could, however, be expressed in any of the world's 53, I think it's actually 54 languages. The form can be different, but the idea is the same. 1 + 1 is 2. 1 + 1 ist 2. Is obviously one of the simplest ideas we can have, though. But what about complex ideas? Here the Muse seems to get a little more picky about how she or he dishes out the inspiration. Okay. It would seem the Muse picks people who are, at the opposite moment, best fit for communicating the idea. And this kind of reminded me of what Delta Force is alleged to have said, or alleged to believe in their selection process, where they say, we don't want the best man, we want the right man at the right time. Now, back to the idea of suspending disbelief. It's a very, very common perception that geniuses are often crazy. They think too much, come up with some brilliant new ideas, then go off into the deep end. I'm skeptical of this viewpoint. While clearly some brilliant people say and do outrageous things that a 10-year-old could see is bonkers, are bonkers, I wonder if we have the right, as people who benefit from these great minds, to cherry-pick what we think is sane and what is not sane. You can't have half a friend. A thesis could be written on this point, but as regards our present topic, just how many writers who have formed the world's canon of literature do we need to agree on the idea of the Muse existing as a real entity for us common folk to maybe take the idea a little bit more seriously? Homer, Hesiod, Virgil, Ovid, Dante, Chaucer, Milton, Shakespeare himself, that'd be Francis Bacon. The list goes on forever. The list of important historical figures who believe in the literal Muse is staggering. What a strange belief for them all to have in common, and seemingly from personal experience. Sure, it's probable a lot of people who write romantically about the Muse in order to imitate their classical heroes are just doing it for style's sake. That goes without saying. But when people who have spent their lives dedicated to creative writing all claim in common that they've had this experience of the Muse, then it's a little bit more difficult just to put down to eccentric madness. So again, in summing up, as far as I can tell, people instinctively, through experience, understand that the Muse exists, and they act as though the Muse exists without ever being able to put it into those words. You won't find people saying, I believe in a literal muse. I believe that it's a literal entity, because that leads to so many more questions. So there's this thing you can't see. Well, explain it. Give me some empirical evidence that it exists. It's not so easy to do that. You can't use the... Well, you probably could, but how would you use the scientific method to prove something that you've experienced yourself? It has to remain, in a way, anecdotal evidence. I don't know what realm of knowledge or epistemology we're delving into here, but when enough people have the same anecdotal witness, testimony, then surely that counts for something. And when you yourself have experienced it, then it doesn't... all the science in the world can't convince you otherwise. I think that's all I was planning to talk about today. Keep fresh.